G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Yuri Elkaim from Healthpreneur based in Toronto, Canada. Thanks for your time today, Yuri.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Becca on your team reached out and thought you might be a good guest to come on.
I guess so. Yeah, it's pretty much as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then we got to know each other a little bit just before we started here. So yeah.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so we help health professionals grow their businesses online. We've been doing so for the past 6 years. And then obviously when the pandemic hit, everyone's like, oh my God, I got to go virtual. So we help them really bridge the gap between their expertise and the people they want to serve, just because they don't really have the acumen of building a business, because that's not taught in any professional schools in the health space, which is a travesty. And I had to learn all this stuff the hard way over, 17 years in business. And I just got to a point where I was very, very good at the marketing and client acquisition. And so we help our clients acquire clients online without all the grind. And then once they're in, how to deliver amazing results without necessarily relying on one-on-one. And yeah, so that's what we do. And how we do that is we have a very simple business model. We don't do 1,000 different things. Our core business model is called the Perfect Client Pipeline. It's a 4-step acquisition model that's based on paid traffic into a webinar and then a consult call. And that's how we've driven 90% of our revenue for the past 6 years. It's exactly the same model we teach our clients. So we actually practice what we preach.
Yep.
So that's what we do and how we do it.
Great. And what areas in health, are there any specific sectors within health that you focus on to help businesses?
Yeah. We don't really say only trainers or only health coaches. We've kind of opened it up, and gravitated to us have been health coaches, nutritionists, dietitians, a lot more natural practitioners. So we don't get a lot of the allopathic medical doctors. We have a few, but it's more on the side of naturopaths, chiropractors, physical therapists, dietitians, health coaches, trainers. So a little bit of a spectrum there.
Great. No, I can imagine there'll be a huge need out there for what you're providing to these health businesses. Marketing, I think, is undervalued by most business owners, or misunderstood, or just not invested in. So it's good you're niching down, or niching down, as you guys call it over there.
Yeah, totally. It's the reality is most health professionals have an aversion to sales and marketing. There's this ickiness to it.
Yep.
And I think the challenge with a lot of our space is that a lot of them in a clinic get very busy in spite of themselves. So if people see a sign, they walk in, they're busy.
Yep.
When you build a business online, that never happens. No one walks by your website. No one knows you have a website. So the danger of obscurity is a very real thing for anyone online, right? So learning how to put yourself out there in a way where, you're omnipresent, but in a way where you're not tied to your phone 24/7, super, super important skill to develop. Because otherwise you just, disappear into oblivion.
Yeah. And that, I guess the funnel you spoke about is becoming more and more used. We use it in one of our businesses, the Distillers Institute online course for people interested in starting a distillery in Australia. So similar, we do webinars, we have discovery calls, email sequences, and it's really, really effective.
It's huge. For us, it's the way I see it is we built. So I had a previous business in the health and fitness space that was very complicated. There were easily 100 SKUs between info products, supplements, courses. It was just overboard complex. And, we built it up to a very good level. I sold it a couple of years ago because I just wanted out, to be honest.
Yep.
And when I started Healthpreneur, I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'm going to have a very simple business model.
Yep.
We have our main coaching program and our mastermind. That's it.
Yes.
You can't afford to work with us here. It's all good. We're going to give you everything for free until you're at a point where it makes sense.
Yep.
And the webinar model for us is, you need one good piece of content, and that's the engine for your business. Right?
Yep.
And it's just sharing your views on a topic, and you just let that run on automation. And obviously you got to tweak some stuff and make sure it works well. But it's just such a powerful tool, and it's leading with value before anything else happens. So it makes a lot of sense.
And you're also building that rapport and the trust with the prospects because of that interaction. Yeah. Yep. Well, I did want to talk about your overall business journey. You said 17 years. So that's the next question. Like, how did you start out?
So I started online in 2005, end of 2005, beginning of 2006. 7 years before that, I worked as a trainer and nutritionist in person. So I went through that whole grind, 12 to 16 hours a day, underpaid, overworked. Before all that, I lost my hair when I was 17 to an autoimmune condition. So that's what got me into health. I pursued studies in kinesiology and health sciences, and then holistic nutrition. And I just got to a point, after doing the one-on-one for 7 years, where I was like, this is just exhausting and I want to help more people. This is not the way I want to do it. So I was working with a coach at the time who said, why don't you just set up a website? I was like, I don't even know what a website is, but let's just figure it out.
This is late 90s?
This is this is 2005. Right, so yeah. This is the time of dial-up was just behind us. We're getting into high speed a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I thought, hey, I'm a smart guy. I can figure this out. So for the first 3 years, I did everything by myself. I learned how to code on websites, and I was using Dreamweaver. It was ridiculous. So my first 3 years in business, I was selling workout programs online, nutrition programs as well. And so I was making less than poverty line income. My first year, I made $6,000. And at the same time, I was cutting away all my in-person clients. So that didn't work out too well monetarily. And then in 2010, I just had a reel to reel with myself. I said, hey man, like what you've been doing isn't working. We got to do something different. And the two decisions I made were, I have to start meeting people. So let's go to some live events, and I need to hire a coach. And so I did those two things at the beginning of 2010, put everything on my credit card, which again, I went to 3 events, hired a coach, more money than I made the previous year. And that was the inflection point to my business. So from that point forward, I started learning about marketing, learning about all this stuff. And, we built a multiple 7-figure business, helped 500,000 customers, wrote a number 2 New York Times bestselling book, did the whole circus act on the media, Dr. Oz, the doctors, all that stuff. And, I was really, at the time, really enjoying that journey. And a lot of people from the outside are like, hey man, this looks like, what are you doing? So I started getting a lot of people asking me for advice because they saw the traction of our business. The challenge was on the inside. I knew the reality is on the surface, we're successful, but I was just very unfulfilled. So those two kind of perfect storms of a lot of other health professionals asking me for advice, and then me being kind of dissatisfied with that business, was really the impetus for developing Healthpreneur a couple of years later. So started Healthpreneur. I was still straddling both businesses, eventually sold the previous one and went full-time with all my focus on Healthpreneur. And I think I have a very unique advantage, I'd say, to offer my clients, which is the perspective of having been in business for so long.
Yep.
And having made so many mistakes.
Yes.
And learning along the way. And I think I provide a lot of perspective for people. And it could be seen as pessimistic, but the reality is no, it's not pessimistic. It's just reality.
Yeah.
I had someone who messaged me on Instagram the other day, and I was like, hey, where do you want your business to be in a year from now? She's like, oh, I want my business to be doubled. I'm like, that's amazing. What's the plan to get there? She's like, I'm going to publish a book and get a book deal. And then I was like, oh dear. She had 478 followers on Instagram.
Right.
And I'm like, is it okay if are you open to some advice? And I said, listen, I've written 3 published books. Here's the reality.
Yeah.
And I just don't think most people understand the gravity of their situations or what it takes to achieve the next level. And I've been through most business models. I've done a lot of stuff, made a lot of mistakes, had a lot of wins. So I just want to share what I can with our audience and our clients.
Yep. So what year did you start Healthpreneur, and how old were you? Was that 2015 or 16?
So that would have been 2016. So I would have been 36.
Yep.
Yep.
Great. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business?
Yeah. So we did, the first year was really kind of figuring out our path, how I want, what was the business model that I wanted to follow. So I'd say like after the first couple months, again, we just decided on that kind of that webinar funnel that I mentioned. Very quickly got a lot of traction. Right now we're doing about 5 million. We're on pace to doing 15 this year. Yeah. So it's every
phenomenal.
single year our business has grown. So yeah.
So over 6 years, this year looking at doing about 15 million.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations on that growth.
Thank you.
What about number of team members? So did you just start full-time effectively on your own, and then what number are you up to now?
So my first business, I started by myself, and then my brother eventually became our director of operations. So he was almost like my partner in crime with that business. So when I started Healthpreneur, I had worked with a lot of team members in the past, and I kind of knew what I needed, what I wanted to avoid. So the first person that I brought on was really just someone who had helped in the previous business, who was looking for a little bit more evolution in their role. And they kind of did a little bit of everything. And then that person evolved into one of our sales reps. And then, so it started as me with someone else doing a bunch of stuff. Very quickly hired a couple sales reps as I started getting my calendar pretty much overloaded. And then that came into some operational issues because we had grown pretty quickly out of the gate. So we brought in an operations manager. But I think, if I were to rewind it again, and this is the advice I give, my clients in this type of business model, I think the most important hire initially is an assistant. Like you have to get all the $10 an hour tasks off your plate right away.
Absolutely.
And then move into, either a sales rep or someone on the delivery side to support that. So that's kind of where it started, but not necessarily in that specific labeling, if you will.
Yep.
Right now we have 22 full-time equivalents,
right.
team members spread out across the world. So we've got people in the Philippines, the US, Canada, Australia, Europe.
Fantastic. And what was out of interest? What was the FTE in your last business? What did you max out there? How many?
It's a good question. I can't even remember. It was probably in like a similar neighborhood, but
yep.
The challenge is that, as an example, we had a lot of focus on content marketing. We had a full-time, our blog had 1.4 million visitors a month.
Wow.
So our editorial department just on the blog was insane. Like we had a $35,000 payroll just for our blog.
Yep.
And it was stupid, right? So yeah, lessons learned.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
There's been a lot of moments. I think I remember the moments where I had set a vision for I always wanted to write a New York Times bestselling book. To be honest with you, is more of an ego play than anything else.
Yep.
So I'll just be very honest. So I set the intention. I actually met the CEO of Hay House, great guy. And I said, hey, I've got an idea for a book. It was actually an ebook that we had at the time that was doing well. So anyways, we did the deal, moved it forward. And I actually created a vision board where I took a New York Times top 10 list and I put my book name in the first spot there. And I looked at that every single day. And I said, this is 9 months out from the book release. And we tested like voraciously, like this funnel, we tested ads. We wanted to make sure that this was a book launch that people promoting the book would actually make money on, because most book launches don't. So, long story short, 9 months later, when the book launched, I'm having dinner with my family on like a Tuesday night, I think. And I get a call from my agent at 6 p.m. And the only thing she said was, you hit number 2. And I was like,
oh, no.
I was like, what? She's like, you hit number 2 on the New York Times list. And I was like, holy shit.
Yep.
And I was like, just out of curiosity, who hit number 1? And she's like, Peter Thiel, who wrote 0 to 1, who's like the co-founder of PayPal.
PayPal, yeah.
I was like, okay, I'll give him first. I think that was a moment because there was so much friggin' work that went into like the writing of the book, the editing, the testing. We had spent $300,000 on the marketing leading up to the book.
Yep. And
to see it actually pay off.
Yep.
That was a big moment for me. And again, just from yes, we could say I wanted to help a lot of people, which I do, but the reality is like no one's getting their lives transformed by a book. But there was just so much learning in there. So I'd say like that's kind of one of the notable ones. And other than that, like to be honest, there's so many wins and learnings that I experience every day. And to be honest, there's so many challenges, as you know, that come up in business where we don't have down days, we don't have down months. It's like, if that was a shitty week, great, let's spin it. How do we, like, we had a pretty slow month in January, and I got really pissed off. And I said, that's never going to happen again. So what can we do to take more ownership of the situation? And I look at all that stuff as a win. So that's, I think initially early on in my business, it was very much have to hit these numbers, have to like succeed in whatever that looks like.
Yep.
And now it has nothing to do with that. It's about the boring work every single day, focus on the process, the outcome takes care of itself.
Yep.
And as long as I'm enjoying the journey, that's all that matters to me.
Just back on the testing of the book, I just got a quick question. So I'm guessing you would have done what Tim Ferriss and a lot of other authors did, which is the title of the book, testing that, A/B testing with ads.
We didn't test with ads on the book title. We actually, the initial book was called Eating for Energy. But there was a small dietitian in Vancouver who owned eatingforenergy.com,
right.
.ca.
Yeah.
And I was like, hold on. And she gave me some slack because they had a registered trademark about it. So I'm like, I'm gonna publish this book with this name and she's gonna get all the business. Forget it. So we changed the name to the All Day Energy Diet. And I can't remember if we had done a poll with our audience or maybe we'd done some stuff, but we figured that was a good title name. And then we just tested just so many different variations of, because what we had done is we wanted to make sure that we acquired the customer in the purchase. So we weren't sending people to Amazon.
Yep.
And we did that because we knew that if we could increase the cart value to a certain level, we'd have a lot of big partners promote the book. So that's what we tested for many, many months, obviously starting with cold traffic and then some stuff we did internally. So that's pretty much what we did on the testing side.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I remember reading 4 Hour Work Week, and Tim Ferriss talks about him actually testing the title of the book. He'd run Facebook, or so back then it was probably Google Ads, early 2000s with different titles, and then people would go through the landing page, obviously, and from that traffic, he was able to determine what was the best title to launch with. I think it was Jay Abraham in the 80s did something similar pre-internet where he'd put ads in the newspaper for a book he hadn't even written. And if he got at least 100 checks or whatever the threshold was, he'd write the book. If not, he'd return all the checks. So that's a good way to test what was going to...
Proof of concept.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What does success look like to you?
Success is really the pursuit of something that's meaningful and doing the best I possibly can every day. So I played, I didn't mention this, but I played professional soccer in my early 20s. And there were many moments in that journey of playing soccer where I lost matches, but I left the field feeling good.
Yep.
Because I'm like, I did everything I possibly could. I didn't leave anything on the field. And there were other times where I had won, or even sometimes where I lost. And I was like, yeah, that was an 8 out of 10 performance, man.
Yeah.
So for me, it's knowing that I do my best. And I know that every day is not going to be like, there's days really like you go through ups and downs, but for the most part, if I can go to bed at the end of the night, knowing that I'm doing work that I enjoy doing, that's meaningful, that's making a difference in people's lives, and that we're making progress forward, for me, that's success.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
You have, I think the number one skill every business owner needs to learn is copywriting.
Oh, yes.
With that said, very closely linked to it is how to craft a compelling offer.
Yep.
Because I talk about this with my clients all the time. I'm like, if people aren't registering for the webinar or they're not booking a call with you, it's because they fundamentally don't see the value in what it is you're asking them to do. So learning how to craft irresistible offers is massively important. And then being able to write words that move people to action is equally as important. I think those are the two most important skills. And this is the big thing. Everyone wants to delegate that shit.
Yep.
And it's like, you can't delegate that. You need to master that.
Yep.
So that when you do hire people down the road, you can have an intelligent conversation and be able to decipher this is good, this is not good.
Yep.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see in the health space. That's probably prevalent elsewhere too. But you have to and again, if everyone could go back to university or school and learn how to write English, but not like the way our English teachers want us to write English, but in a way that moves people, single best skill we can build.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you read David Ogilvy's book? I think it's called An Advertising Man. 1950s, great book, and just shows the power of copy back in the 50s.
Huge.
You know, even with television ads, etc. But and on the irresistible offer, have you read Alex Hormozi's book, $100 Million Offers?
100%, great book.
Yeah, it is a terrific book. Yeah, really drives home that point that you just made.
Yeah, it's like you can have, and this is the thing, when you start testing stuff in marketing, you realize, we've tested thousands and thousands and thousands of Facebook ads to the same offer, right? What's the difference? Oh, it's better copy or it's a better image. Now, okay, well, that's one offer. Well, can you make the offer better? Probably, right? Like there's the thing is, like, we should never rest on our laurels. Like if you're paying X amount for a lead or X amount for a new client, don't settle there, because there's always a lower level. I mean, in terms of cost per acquisition, it's not about paying the least amount for a lead. It's about being able to pay the most for a customer, as Dan Kennedy's talked about, as Jay Abraham's talked about. But like, I think a lot of people put out the bare minimum and they're like, it's good enough. I'm like, trust me, if you're paying $10 a lead, you could probably get that down to $5 with better copy and a better offer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that changes your business.
How did you fund your business?
Bootstrapped.
So both of them bootstrapped?
Yep.
And so no, haven't taken investors on along the way?
Thank God, no. It was funny, actually, my first business, because I had no clue what I was doing, I thought PR was the way to go. So I had a PR person who was like, yeah, it's 20 grand to work with me. And I was like, okay. So I had a friend who introduced me to someone who was investing in businesses at the time. And I was like, I need $20,000. And he was like, all right, let's talk about equity. And I was literally about to give away equity in my first company for $20,000. And thank God that didn't happen. But I was clueless at the time. So I'm a big, big fan of bootstrapping. I think it fosters innovation. I think it's very important to be up against the wall a lot, because that's where resourcefulness comes from. And
also being frugal as well. It gives you that good ethic of just not spending money on useless shit you don't need to. You've got to be really careful with your cash.
Yeah, totally. Like when it's your money, and this is the thing, is like when you run a business and you have team members in your business, as an example. So we had an issue with a client recently, and some information came to light that one of our team members had given some bad advice that led to their ad account getting shut down. Now we don't do refunds in our business. It's like, that's just our policy, but we decided to give him a refund on his investment, because I was like, I wasn't aware of this. Now that I am, we fucked up.
Yeah.
So here you go.
Yeah.
Now, I, as the business owner, eat that entire refund, and it's $13,000 in this case.
Yeah.
I can't go to our team member and say, "Hey, this is your fault. You're paying me $13,000."
No.
Like, I would love to do that, and obviously we have profit shares in our business, and there's ways that our team members, have a bit of a say in the profit. But that's the thing, as a business owner, like, you're the one who eats this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Your team members don't have the same level of losing sleep at night or the same level of investment. But if you can build a team where even salaried employees have at least a greater stake in the bigger vision, that becomes a game changer.
Yeah. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
So in my same industry?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think my passion has always been helping health professionals. I think, like, would it be easier to work with business coaches? Yeah, for sure. Because they're they're business coaches. But there's an aspect of why I do what I do. And I firmly believe that we can make a dent in the universe. And I would do it all again. Yeah.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
The most stressful points?
Yeah. Just one, the most.
I would say, so 2009, my first business, when I thought, like, I'm cool, too cool for school. So I built this thing, which at the time was, I called it was called Fitter Than the Pros. It was an interview series where I interviewed 13 of the top health experts that were crushing it online. And I thought this was the best thing since sliced bread. I'm like, I'm going to interview them, see how they stay in such good shape as they built their business. Everyone would want to know this stuff. And it was essentially like a summit back in the day.
Yep.
So I I had told everyone, like, this is going to be a 7-figure launch. It's going to be huge. And, a lot of big people in our space take part and promote it. And I remember the day that we went live, I was actually the night before, I went for dinner with some friends, and I'm like, get whatever you want. It's on me. They're like, what would you win the lottery? I'm like, no. Like, but tomorrow we have this big launch. It's going to be huge. So I wake up the next morning, run to my computer like a kid on Christmas morning, and check my stats, and there's nothing. And I was like, obviously the website must be down. There's just so much traffic. Website's fine, right? No issue there. And then I started panicking. And so for the next 5 days, it was me trying to continue selling everyone on promoting this, even though it wasn't converting. And in the whole 5 days, we made a grand total of just over $5,000 gross.
Wow.
After I paid out commissions, I made about $1,200. And this was for months, like leading up to this, interviews, all this kind of stuff. But it wasn't even about the money. Like, it was about losing face and over-promising to a lot of people that, like we're very successful. Thankfully, I learned from that. And a lot of those people are still very, very good friends of mine. But I would say that's probably one of the most stressful moments of my business, because I was just clueless. I had no idea that like that offer was just not, people didn't care about that. And that was a big rude awakening for me, for sure.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I think balancing hard work with detachment. So the ability to just take the foot off the gas pedal and knowing that everything's going to work out. But where my wiring is just like push hard, keep going, get in there and do the work. And it's this balancing act of there's a time to do the work and there's a time to understand that everything is going to work out perfectly for you. And I think too much of one or the other isn't great, at least for me. But my default setting is just to go, 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 go. And it's almost like I don't trust that all this stuff is going to happen. So learning that that balance has been huge. And I'd say, honestly, that's probably been one of the biggest points of value that I've been able to bring to my team and all of our clients who are going through the same journey of like, oh my God, why am I not a millionaire a week in? Right?
Yep.
So like that perspective of like, like here's kind of how it goes has been very important for us.
Yeah. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Again, like all problems are people problems, right? Starting with ourselves. And I am someone by nature who avoids conflict. So that's been very uncomfortable for me to grow into, to say, hey, I need to have a hard conversation with someone before we end up having the real hard conversation of calling people out, keeping them accountable. It's not something I enjoy doing, but to be honest, I've realized that it's one of the most important things as a leader.
Yep.
Is building a culture where we feel like family, but we're not a family, we're a team. And if you don't perform, you sit on the bench. And if you don't perform, you might leave.
Yeah.
That's been very challenging for me to grow into, but it's been, so, in terms of like what I like the least, maybe that a little bit, but it's also been something very important for our growth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of my sayings, people are the hardest thing in small business and where the value's at. But also, like your point you just made, it's not just the team members, it's also ourselves. We can get in the way.
That's where it starts, 100%. But on the flip side of that, our people are our biggest assets.
Yeah, that's right.
Like for the longest time, I said, I don't want to have any people. I don't want to have headaches. But when you have the right people, they're like a friggin' godsend. But if you have the wrong people, it's the worst.
The chasm between an A and a B player, it's like you get 3 or 4 times more value out of an A player compared to a B player. It's just stark when you finally stumble upon the difference and you start getting recruitment right. It is just amazing.
Yeah. And I think for people who haven't experienced that, then you're not working with A players.
Yeah.
You'll know you have an A player because it's almost instantaneous. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
where has this person been?
Yeah, it's like just found a
it
unicorn.
doesn't happen 6 months later. It's like right away. You're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
Well, I mean, selfishly, I love the freedom that it provides, the freedom of like creative expression, right? So like kind of being able to express what I want to express, but also the freedom that it's allowed me to create in my life, to be able to spend time with my kids and travel and, that stuff. The impact, we're having obviously on the people we're serving and seeing their lives, not just their businesses, but their lives transform. And then third is like, I really, really, really enjoy helping my team grow. So seeing someone start here and helping them, coach them, elevate them to a point where it's like, man, like it's incredible. I love helping my team members achieve their dreams, because it's one thing if I make my own, or if I achieve my own, that's great. I want to help them and do that as well. So those are probably the three big ones for why I love, having a small business.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
There's a lot. I think the biggest mindset shift is, well, there's a lot of them, but I'll just share one of them. I think that's interesting is, I think the most important mindset to have is the importance of longevity. The ability to play in the game long enough will almost predict your success. And it's challenging because we all want results quicker, but if we can lengthen our time horizons and say, all right, like I would love for this to happen. Like, I don't care about, like I've told my team this, I'm like, listen, we set these numeric goals with these arbitrary dates.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like we hit this amount of money by this date. So what happens if we hit it a week later? Like who gives a shit, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So it's just like we put these weird, and like obviously at the same time, it's important to have constraints and like, deadlines and stuff. But I think when we extend our time horizon, it reduces the amount of stress that we put on ourselves, like unnecessary. And I think people just give up too soon. Like I think the first 2 years in business are the most important. You put up with so much shit that you have to go through yourself of like, can I do this? Is it going to work? Oh, this didn't work. Maybe I'll do something else. If you just do one thing extremely well, and you say for the first 2 years of your business, you're not going to do anything else in terms of like shiny objects and jumping on the next thing, those first 2 years become fundamental for your growth. And if you keep doing that 5, 10, 15 years down the road, you become the preeminent player in your marketplace. So I think that mindset of I'm playing this game for life, not for this year, and I'm trying to like get an exit.
I've got two good quotes. Bill Gates said, we humans often overestimate what they can achieve in a year, but underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. And then one of my favorite quotes, which I've actually got here on my desk, Benjamin Disraeli, the ex-British Prime Minister, the secret of success is constancy of purpose.
Yeah.
And I certainly had that problem early on in my business career. Shiny object syndrome, just chasing too many things, not being focused. And it is. Especially
with social media, like every third or fourth post is an ad for the next thing, whatever, right? Just on the line of quote, my favorite quote is Winston Churchill. And he said, success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Yep.
And that's been my journey. It's like knock down, knock down, knock down, keep going, knock down, knock down, knock down, keep going.
He also said, if you're going through hell, keep going.
Yep. And not everyone's cut out for that. Right. No. And that's fine. But I think that's why having these conversations is so important, because people have to realize how friggin' hard it is to build a business.
Yep. It's one of the things I've got a bit of a mission on. I don't really work with startups these days, but I do give some, mentoring or advice occasionally. But it's one of my passions is to smash that myth that it's so easy, and it's not, especially if you don't put the right structures around yourself early on, like mentors or coaches, advisors, etc. Read a shitload. People think it's pretty easy, but it's, as you and I both know, that's far from the truth.
It's like having kids. Like I've got 4 boys. It's freaking hard. Yeah. But it's worthwhile. Anything great is hard.
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
And it's just accept it and just get on with it.
Yeah. What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
Better health.
Yes.
Like your business, you can do whatever you want in your business, but if you get sick and die, it's all for naught.
Yep.
Your business, if you have terrible focus, terrible energy, that's your capacity ceiling. You can't outperform your health. I have two friends who passed away during the pandemic, and successful businesses, but they are overweight, they drank, they smoked.
Yep.
What's the point?
Yeah.
And I think there's far too much conversation, I think, in this world around like grind it out, hustle, work 18 hours a day. I'm like, it's bullshit.
No, I totally agree.
Right? Like there's a time to put in the work, but if you do not have 30 minutes a day to exercise, to work out, to get a sweat on, like nothing else you do is more important than that.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
Be the change you want to see in your business. Become more productive and less stressed with our free Transform Your Performance online course. Once you see the benefits, put your entire team through the course at no cost. We start out by telling you the secret to guaranteed success, then over 100 lessons help you be more focused, present, productive, and feel more in control about work. growasmallbusiness.com. Can you talk how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah, so we have a very specific hiring pipeline, actually very similar to, like, we call it the perfect talent pipeline. So essentially what we do when we hire is the first thing we have people do is they send us a video cover letter. So the video cover letter, because we want to see people on camera, can they even talk? I mean, maybe you're not surprised, I don't know.
Yeah.
In the last year, we've had a handful of candidates where one of them was high. We had other ones that were on their bed shooting a video, unmade bed. The room is a disaster. I'm like, everything I need to know, I just saw right there, right? So we have people submit a video cover letter, 2 to 3 minutes answering a few questions. If that video cover letter is 9 minutes, that person does not go any further.
Can't follow clear instruction. Yeah.
It's very, very clear. And I don't think that the thing people don't realize is that there's a very specific reason why we do things. In the job description itself, randomly in one of the bullets, we'll put in the secret code is HP 2021.
Yeah.
And in the questions of the application, we ask, what's the secret code? And I'd say, like, I don't know, 10 to 20% of people, they'll email us or they'll send me a message on Facebook. Where do I get the secret code? I'm like, are you for real? Like, this is exactly why you should be working at Starbucks making lattes.
Yeah.
And maybe not even that. And maybe that's a very harsh thing to say, but I think there's just a lot of very, 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 very mediocre people in this world. And you have to filter out those people. So first thing we do is video cover letter. The next step, if they pass that, is we send them a test project. So very specific to their role. Takes them maybe 10 minutes. If the test project is good, we'll set up an initial interview with one of our team members. So the only time we're taking our time is after the first 2 steps, because we don't want to waste time with people who are wasting time. Team interviews, all good, cool. Depending on the role, if it's a sales position, it'll be a role play. If it's not a sales position, it's more of a direct conversation. We have a very specific kind of questioning process, looking for character traits and core values, et cetera. And then if all looks good there, we'll do reference checks, and then a final interview. So it's about 5 steps.
That's great.
Through that whole process. But, you know, I think one of the things that we've learned in this past year specifically is let people know. And again, this depends on the business, right? Let people know how hard it's going to be to work with your company. If you have a fast-paced company where, like, for instance, one of our core values is speed is king. We'll let people know, like, hey, like, these are some very important things. It's going to be challenging. We're not expecting to work 24/7. I could care less if you work from 2 a.m. till 7 a.m, but you need to get it done. And I think some of the mistakes that we've made was in a couple positions was just not being very clear about the expectations or the cadence of what it's like to work with us. I think we have a very good company culture. We have, you know, great employees. But listen, like, if you don't perform, like, you're not going to stick around too long. You know? And in certain positions that are, let's say, more commission based, like, hey man, like you're not getting any base here.
Yep.
Like, you want to make money, here's how you're going to do it. Are you cool with that? So I think just setting those expectations has been very important, and being very, 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 very clear around your core values.
Yep.
We actually updated our core values last year because we realized we had a few people come in lower level positions, and we started getting very frustrated with them. And we realized they weren't meeting our real core values. So we went back to the drawing board and we said, what drives us crazy? What do we really like about the high performers on our team? What do they all have in common? And we came down to the real essence of who we are as a company. And that's, made such a difference to help us filter out and really zone in on the right people.
Yep.
So those are a couple of things that have worked, and obviously some lessons in that hiring process.
That is a really good recruitment process and pipeline you've just described there. I had a guest on a few weeks ago who mentioned that in the job ad, they specifically sprinkle in a shit ton of grammatical errors. And then down at the bottom of the ad, they say, there's a lot of grammatical errors above. In your cover letter, please spell out or tell us what those are. It's just another hurdle. People that aren't actually paying that much attention to ads, they're just, clicking apply for any job at all. Yeah. It's just, ridiculous how, and the other one I was going to ask, on your projects, do you give them a deadline?
So this is the interesting thing, is we give them something that takes them 10, maybe 15 minutes, and we just leave it at that. It's amazing. Some people are like, yeah, I'll get this back to you next week. Like, great.
It's 10 minutes.
You're not even hired. So like, the thing that people don't understand is that it's not the thing, it's how you do the thing.
Yep, that's it.
Right? Like last night we went to a restaurant for my wife's, well, it wasn't quite her birthday, but it was her birthday week. And at the end of dinner, so it's 4 kids and they all had little ice creams with their meals. But my son and I shared an adult meal, so not a kid's meal. So technically he didn't get a kid's dessert. So when we ordered the dessert, my wife was like, oh, like I just realized that Oscar didn't get a kid's meal. And I said, we'll see how the waitress does here.
Yeah.
Right. So this is her opportunity here. And so she comes back and she's got 4 small ice creams, like good start. Because she, according to what we ordered, should only have been 3, but she brought 1 anyways. And then we had a little mini fudge brownie sundae that we ordered for my wife and I, and she brought the large size because it was her birthday kind of. And I'm like, this girl gets it.
Yeah.
Right. Like these are the things that we look for.
Yes.
Like getting people to think a little bit beyond what they're asked to do.
Absolutely.
And that makes all the difference.
Just back on, before I mentioned another book, just why I asked about the deadline, because other people give projects and they give them a deadline, 48 hours or whatever it may be, because that just cuts out a lot of other people, because some people never submit it, others miss the deadline, so they're automatically out. And then you're just down to a handful of people that are, really the ones that you really want to have a close look at.
Yeah, 100%.
On that, finding team members, observing for their innate attitude and behaviours of how that will fit with you. Have you read the book First Break All the Rules? Marcus Buckingham.
Why does this sound familiar?
What the world's best managers do differently. It's a phenomenal book. They gave
I feel like I have that somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't.
Who
wrote it?
Marcus Buckingham. He was part of the Gallup organization, so they used 10 or 15 million data points.
Yeah.
And they gave you an example in the book of a big international hotel chain. They didn't say who it was, and they wanted to. They wanted to find out, each hotel had an A player in each team, obviously, or a few A players, and they wanted to replicate that and overhaul their recruitment process so they would get these A players. And they traveled around the world, interviewed managers and all the team members, etc., used heaps of data points, millions of data points. And what was one great example they gave in the book where this cleaner was by far, 10 times better than any of the other cleaners in this one hotel. And they just asked a whole lot of leading questions. And one of them was, so tell us, how do you go about cleaning a room when a guest left? And the cleaner said, I obviously do all the obvious stuff, but just before I'm almost done, I lay on the bed before I obviously make the bed, and I look up as if I'm the guest and think, is there any dust in the fan? Is there cobwebs in the corner of mist? And so to have that kind of attitude or way of thinking it just was a good indicator for them to be able to go back upstream to ask questions in recruitment like that, to pull that out of people, to find more of those openings. It's a great book.
Actually, I remember that I've read the book, and I think it's on I'm looking at my bookshelf. It's like on my Kindle, because I can never remember the book covers on my Kindle, because you don't see them.
Yes.
But I remember that story. It's fascinating for sure.
What are some things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
I think you need, first and foremost, there needs to be a very clear, structured communication rhythm. I know everyone has different takes on meetings and whatever. I think at the very minimum, everyone in your organization should come together once a week. For us, we call it a weekly sync. And for us, it's not so much here's the scorecard, here are the metrics, because most of our team is not they don't care about that, right? So we use the weekly sync to get everyone to, again, focus on the core values, focus on our vision, our mission. And then we share team wins, client wins. We do breakouts where everyone can get to know each other a little bit better. We'll share, last 2 weeks ago, we did some stuff around the Patrick Lencioni book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, right? Wow. So we did a little quiz around that, had some breakout conversations around there, I think communication is important. What Lencioni talks about in his book, I think is very, very relevant for a lot of businesses, is you have to build trust with your team to the point where there can be an open dialogue without fear of recourse.
Yes.
Right. A lot of times people don't talk, they don't speak up because they fear, oh my God, I might get fired if I say something.
Yep.
And whatever you can do to create that space of, I can speak my mind because that's the way we do things here. Very important. So I think having a good communication cadence at a high level, as a whole organization, creating a culture of trust where people can openly share. And then I think from a structural standpoint, especially if you have more and more team members, obviously you want to have or start thinking about a leadership team, because I have a buddy of mine who runs a close to $10 million business. And he was telling me he had, I think, 16 direct reports.
What?
I'm like, dude. And so he had hired a consultant to come in to help with the organizational stuff. I'm like, you shouldn't have more than 5 or 6.
Oh, that's right.
So, he built out his leadership team, et cetera. But I think that's important too, is that having the opportunity for, if you have direct reports, they'll have direct reports, those one-on-one conversations, whether it's weekly or bi-weekly, very important, because when you do those properly, you don't need to worry about yearly performance reviews, because every week there's feedback and coaching. So there's no surprises, right?
Absolutely. Mark Horstman from Manager Tools talks about that. He gives the analogy of driving a car. So if you're giving regular feedback, whether it's on the fly or in those weekly one-on-ones, which they really encourage, then it's like driving down the road and you're just making minor adjustments to the steering wheel, as opposed to when something happens, some behavior that's been, missed, you're jerking the wheel so you stay on the road. Have you listened to the Manage Tools podcast at all?
I haven't, no.
They're good. They've been around 16, 17 years. #1 downloaded business podcast on the internet. And what you've been speaking about, feedback and one-on-ones and coaching, is exactly the stuff that they preach.
It's so funny because running a coaching company, building a team is like coaching your clients, but coaching your team members. It's very, very similar. And I think in my first business, the mistake that I made was I don't want to talk to anyone. So my brother was more like the people manager. And I was like, but you can't, but even I'm a big soccer fan. So Canada qualified for the World Cup. Mm-hmm. And I never thought I was going to say that in my life. Yeah. But their head coach, he's a special human. I'm like, what is he doing? Because I've never seen in my life a group of guys in Canada believe that they can beat the best teams in the world. And, as he started talking, obviously as I'm following the team and interviews over the months, he's talking about, when I came in, I sat down, I had one-on-ones with every player consistently. And these are the things that I think, so my nature, I'm very task oriented. So I put tasks sometimes, quite often, before people.
Me too.
And I have to remind myself, dude, that's only going to take you so far.
Yeah.
If you can build your people, they'll build your dreams. And I think what John Herdman, the Canadian coach, has done is just such an amazing job at that people side of things.
Yep.
And then it's reflected in the execution on the field. And it's just such a beautiful parallel with business. And, naturally some business owners are more people oriented and they're, they love doing that stuff. Others are more task oriented. But I do think it's really important to make everyone feel heard, special, appreciated on your team. And honestly, even if it's just send them a memo on Slack, like out of the blue, hey, thanks so much. Just really appreciate you, whatever it is. Those little things make a huge difference.
They do. Yeah. Tell the audience how you've handled balance.
Right now it's, we just had dinner. My kids are playing outside right now. So for me, like, what is balance? Is it, I stop at 5 and then it's family time. Most days I finish 3:30. But to be honest, for me, it's like I work 7 days a week. I love what I do.
Yep.
I started this journey thinking I just wanted to kick my feet up and chill. And it's the last thing I want to do.
That's right.
I love working. I work like 70 hours a week and I love it. Right.
Yeah.
It's about doing things that you want to do more of. Mm-hmm. And so for me, for balance, I think I see my kids all the time. I'm with my wife. We're at home all the time. Right. I think there's it's this integration as opposed to like work time, family time. For the most part, I have 6 hours a day where I do my work and then the kids are home. But, even if we're traveling, I'm going to spend an hour or two working, and that's just the way it is. Cause I want to, I need to contribute and add value. And I know that there's a time to unplug, but if I do that for too long, I go crazy.
Yep.
So for me, balance is really about take care of my health, spend time with my kids, do things I love doing outside of work as well. And then in the work is doing things I love. So I don't feel like I have to take time off.
Yep. Yep. How much professional development have you invested in yourself over the years?
A lot. So when I didn't, I invested nothing. And then from 2010 to right now, probably more than 1.1 million last I calculated on coaching, masterminds, mentorship. It's I understand why people don't, because, is it worth it? Do I have the money? It is so worth it. Even the worst investment will work out because value is an extraction game, right? It's not about what you can get from someone. It's what you can extract from that environment. And I think a lot of adults are still very small children in adult clothing where they're pointing fingers to say I didn't get any value there. It's like, well, dude, when was the last time you showed up? Yeah. Just find a way, man. You will always make a return on that investment.
Have you had coaches or mentors along the way?
Yeah, many. Yeah, 100%.
And do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Not corporately, in terms of that structure, but loosely through one of the masterminds I'm in. So other people who are a little bit further along in business will kind of use them as our advisors in different situations. So loosely, but not formally.
And you're one of the few we've had on that's actually exited a business, both financially and operationally. Got any advice for the audience on exiting?
Well, I don't think, to be honest, it's as easy as we make it out to be. You have to build a business that relies on you 0%.
Yep.
Especially if you're in service, you have to productize your service and you have to build your business so here's my take. Someone was asking me the other day, are you building your business to keep it or sell it? My answer was, I'm building to sell without the intention of ever doing so.
Yep.
So you have to build the infrastructure, the systems, the processes in place where it can grow in your absence. And then if that's the case, why would you ever want to leave?
Yeah, exactly.
So 2 things for me, I love what I do and it cash flows.
Yep.
Why would I want to sell it? Because a lot of times, I hear people talk about it I'm going to get a 5x multiple on my profit. I'm like, dude, you're making more money than that already. Why would you want to, I don't know, unless you hate your business, right? So if you want to sell, just make sure that you're not the main, act on stage. Second is, we talked about focus earlier, right? But the reality is that if you're reliant on one channel of acquisition, as an example, that's a recipe for disaster, because now that's a huge risk on anyone who's taken this on. So if you're only Facebook ads,
diversify.
Okay, it may have worked for you, but investors, they're going to see that a little bit differently. So you have to mitigate risk for potential buyers, which means you have to figure all this stuff out. And as far as I see it, I mean, I think in my experience, I wanted to exit my business because I no longer wanted to be in the business.
Yeah.
But if you build a business you love, you want to be in, build it to the point where you don't want to sell it, you'll probably get way better offers, and you may not even want to sell at that point.
All right, Yuri, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Hardest thing is dealing with the volatility. It's kind of like investing in crypto, but I think the difference is like, you're more active in it than most people would be with crypto. I think you just have to be okay with constantly getting punched in the head.
Yeah.
Right? Like most stuff you're gonna do is not gonna work.
Yeah.
Like it's like, if I run 10 ads, 9 of them are gonna suck.
Yeah.
Even if I think they're the best ads of all time. And the sooner you realize that, you're like, oh, it's no big deal. It's the way it is. So I think managing expectations is important, because if you think you're going to hit big time and then you don't, there's problems there. So if you think you're going to hit big time, great, just lengthen your time horizon. Sorry, I just spaced out on the question. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, I think you answered it. That was the hardest thing in small business.
Yeah. So I think it's being able to deal with the downs, understand there's more downs than ups. But with all that said, over time, the journey is 1,000,000% worth it.
Definitely. Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Let me look at my bookshelf here. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to give, if I can, 3 books.
Yeah, go for it.
Both books by Robert Cialdini. So Influence,
love that. Yeah. I haven't read the second one. That's more recent, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a couple years old. It's good as well.
Influence is great. I love that story and he uses himself. I haven't finished the book because I keep fucking giving it away to people. So I bought the Kindle version of the audio book the other week just to get through it. But one of my favorite stories, and for the audience, he talks a lot about himself in the book and his own experiences. I think it's the tagline's The Psychology of Persuasion. And there's some great stories in there. My favorite one is when he's talking to his neighbor who's a toy executive. Do you remember that one? Yeah, that's just brilliant. Sorry, keep going with the other books.
So the other book would be Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely.
Right.
I love those 3 books because they deal with human psychology. And if you can understand why people do what they do, you become a much more influential business owner, marketer. You're able to get the results you want to get by influencing others, for the positive.
Yeah. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Yeah. I think honestly, YouTube is a really good platform. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube. Like there's a lot of surface level stuff too, but I think, we've mentioned him before. I think Alex Hormozi is a wealth of knowledge.
Right.
Someone who's been there and done that at a very high level. I think you have to, there's a time to consume and there's a time to create, and it kind of ebbs and flows.
Yep.
And I think you have to find the person or the source of information that resonates with you the most, and then kind of discard some of the rest, because, marketing in general is all about positioning.
Yeah.
Right. So if someone says this, someone else is going to say the opposite just because they want to position themselves differently. So I think you have to find, the select few people that you resonate with that makes sense to you, and just follow their stuff to the depths of the earth, whether it's podcasts, books, newsletters, emails, videos. I'm a big believer in that. I think, for me personally, I think Frank Kern has been one of those people in my life that from day one, like until this day, he's, just for me at least, just the way he approaches marketing is just incredible. Dean Jackson, who is a good friend of mine as well, just such a smart thinker when it comes to marketing. And so I've kind of latched on to 4 or 5 people, over 15 years, and I've done my best to just devour their stuff. And then when new people come along and maybe slightly different verticals or niches, it's like, oh, cool. For this, I'm going to listen to this person or go deep on that. And that's how I've approached it. So it's tough to say that there's like one podcast.
Yeah.
But I think for me personally, it's been like, what do I need the most help with now? And let me go deep on that until I'm, beyond that.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
One tool?
Yep.
I think, a pretty simple one is Slack.
Yep.
I mean, at a very basic level, I think it's a very good communication platform for teams. So yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Knowing what I know now?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Find someone who's done what you already want, like who's already done what you want to do, and hire them if you can to come into your business and help you do that. And if you can't, hire them as a mentor to learn from.
Yeah, great advice. Thanks very much for your time today, Yuri. I think the audience got a lot of value out of what you shared with us. A terrific journey, a couple of businesses there, amazing growth over the last 6 years. And congratulations on both successes.
Thanks so much, Troy. Some fun, good questions.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.